Prismatic Warlock has got to be one of the most fun experiences I've had with a class since I started all the way back in Destiny 1. And today is no different, because I'm bringing you a build that is not Bleak Watcher and Getaway Artist. This Warlock build takes advantage of an exotic that has found new potential thanks to Prismatic, and that's Felwinters Helm. If you aren't familiar with Felwinters Helm, it has the ability to weaken targets around it as well as suppressing them in a large radius. And it's fantastic for aim-game situations, and comboing it with our aspects makes for a super fun and crazy build. So let's talk about the Felwinters Shock Warlock build. Let us first understand the aspects of this build. Lightning Surge is our first. It allows us to teleport around the arena and shock a bunch of enemies that chain and jolt together. This aspect alone is quite strong on Arc, but it goes one step further on Prismatic because we have access to Threaded Needle, which means we get 3 charges, which means we can use this 3 times. So 3 teleports is pretty fun to be doing, and you can combo this with another exotic and get 4 of these. You can jolt everything and wipe out a lot of red bars and also yellow bars as well. This combos very nicely with our second aspect, Feed the Void, which if you are an avid Void user, you will know that any Void ability kills will proc Devour, but on Prismatic, it's any ability kills, which means when we get Devour, we're able to have health regen and get our grenade energy back on our kills after we have procced it. This means anytime we use our Lightning Surge melee, we are getting health regen, which means we can go on and keep getting more kills. Already, this is a pretty crazy ability loop, but it goes one step further when we combine it with our exotic of choice, Felwinters Helm. Felwinters Helm has a unique effect of weakening targets around you when you get powered melee final blows. But not only that, when you finish your targets, it also applies the same effect and gets bigger depending on the target that you have finished. This weaken effect is a 30% debuff on targets within the radius, and obviously that gets bigger when we do things such as killing champions with finishers. It hasn't been used that much on Warlock in my builds purely because melees on each of the subclasses are strong and they kind of suck and they don't really combo too well with this. But with Prismatic, we get to go a little bit wild because of the combinations with Threaded Needle and Lightning Surge. So we have jolted targets that die pretty easily, but anything that we don't kill gets to be suppressed and takes more damage from our weapon. This will allow us to take advantage of our Storm Grenade to follow up with extra damage and our artifact mods, which will add a bunch of buffs and the weapons that we use, which we'll talk about in just a moment. But we need to talk about our fragments because they really pull the build together. The most important of these is Facet of Defiance. This allows our finishers to create a detonation that either slows, jolts, severs, scorches, or makes our targets volatile depending on what super we are using. And in our case, we are using Needle Storm for that extra burst DPS when needed. The second of these is also Facet of Dawn, which allows our powered melee hits to give us Radiant, which is going to mean all of our weapons get a 25% damage buff. Combining that with our 30% damage debuff that we have on targets, we will be cooking enemies. Facet of Purpose adds extra damage resistance for this build because when we are using a Strand super, we are able to get Woven Mail when we pick up an Orb of Power. And considering we're making so many orbs, we will have a constant uptime on our build for this damage reduction and all the other buffs that we need to be able to survive. Facet of Balance also plays into this because when we get kills with our light damage, we are able to generate more melee energy much quicker, with the added bonus of doing darkness damage to be able to bring back our grenade quicker. This is going to be key because we need to use this to generate more of our lightning surges because we have more threaded melee. Our final fragment on the build is Facet of Sacrifice, which allows us to get bonus Darkness Transcendent energy whenever we get ability final blows with a light debuff active. So Amplified, Radiant, and Devour, which we'll have at all times. The last fragment can be swapped out to see fit, but all of these are great additional buffs to the build to keep the loop of teleporting around and jolting everything. Moving into our artifacts, there are a couple of mandatory ones that I would recommend. The first of those is going to be Void Hegemony, which when we weaken targets and we destroy them, we get a small overshield, which is going to be great because that's more damage reduction, alongside Galvanic Armor, which gives us even more damage reduction when we are amplified, which is around 35%. And then Radiant Orbs is a way to get Radiant if you don't have the melee ability up and you pick up an Orb of Power. It means that you always have that 25% buff active. There's a mandatory one here, which is Shield Crush, which is while you have Woven Mail, Frost Armor, or Void Overshield, your melee recharges faster and deals increased damage, which we'll be doing a lot. And also, while we're Amplified or Radiant, your Grenade recharges faster. There are two ones that you can swap between. Expanding Abyss is also going to be good for if you're using a Void weapon to take advantage of the weakened target, so something like Edge Transit or Falling Guillotine. But I do like using Transference in regular play because when we are Transcendent, we get ourselves grenade and melee damage increased while we are, and then afterwards, when we've done a bunch of weapon kills while we're Transcendent, it refunds light and darkness energy after Transcendent ends, so we can get it back a lot quicker. Shout out to Counter Energy if you're in a lot of champion content, but this only really works if you're in a fire team, and if you're on your own, it's okay, but I wouldn't really recommend it over these three. Potentially, if I wanted to do more of an endgame focus build, I'd have to test this out a little bit more. I do, however, think that you should get Elemental Siphon, which is rapid final blows with a kinetic weapon or an elemental weapon that matches your super, means that you are able to get an elemental pickup. In this case, we make Tangles because we are using Strand, which is fantastic because we can use this with the Threaded Blast, which is destroying a Tangle with a Strand weapon, creates a larger and more damaging explosion. This is nuts. You could potentially go for Creeping Chill, but I'm not really going with the stasis element of this build, but it's also quite good as well. Moving into our mods, this setup pretty much stays the same, bar our Bond, which we would drop one outreach for Special Finisher when we are in endgame activities. But apart from that, all of these mods are going to be the same. In our main slot, we have ourselves Strand Siphon. You can maybe swap this out for an ammo finder if you really want, but because of the weapons that we are using, this is going to be key. We have two hands-on, so we can generate more super energy on melee kills. We have Momentum Transfer, which is causing damage with our grenade, reduces your melee cooldown. We also have Firepower, which grenade final blows creates an orb of power, and also Heavy-Handed. You could double up on Heavy-Handed here, but I feel like I can get more orb generation with both of them on, which is quite good, which means I can get back my melee ability quite quick and my super. Resistances on our chest piece. We have one Invigoration, two Invigoration, I should say, and 3 Absolution, or Energy 3 Absolution here, which reduces all ability cooldowns each time you pick up an Orb of Power. And the same here, but instead of all abilities, it's mainly your melee ability. You can maybe swap one of these out for recuperation if you needed. Double Outreach, which allows us to get melee back quicker whenever we use our class ability, and also Distribution, which is the same but for all abilities. I would highly recommend that you put a bunch of stats into Strength if you can, so you can get your melee back quicker, and 100 Resilience is recommended here. For our weapons, before we go into the live gameplay segment, I do recommend the Call here because it's going to take advantage of the Threaded Blast when we make a Tangle. It's amazing. Demolition is 1 for all, or Lead from Gold 1 for all. I only really use Demolition 1 for all whenever I'm in kind of endgame stuff, so I can get my grenade back quicker, but Lead from Gold is also good as well. And then for our secondary, I'm using Graviton Lance here. You can use anything here, and the same with the heavy slot. I just like having the Call on as kind of the mandatory strand weapon. The other two, you can change depending on the activity, whether you need yourself a Unstoppable Scout Rifle, even though we've got Unstoppable Sidearm, Barriers, Overload Hand Cannon, SMGs. It's entirely up to you, but I do recommend the Call here, and shout out to Indebted Kindness as well. That is also quite good too. But let's go into the live gameplay segment before we round out the video. So as you can see here, this is an example of how the build will work, and we are currently 22 power levels under. The activity cap is 2020, which means this thing, basically we're on like contest mode and below. Now, there is a lot of surges and all this other stuff going on, and I have different weapons set up, but let me just showcase how the build works and where it can fall down on this difficulty. So we're going to slide in, get ourselves a kill. We can then shoot a little bit so we can generate our finisher. When we do that, you can see all of those other enemies become weakened, which is great for us because it means that we can then chain a finisher. We can throw out a grenade, get another one, slide in, generate more orbs, which is great for us. No, that you see how the jolt is kind of just, it keeps going. And as we've already done, we've already spawned the champion in, which is where we're going to struggle because I need to get to a part of the room which isn't going to kill me. Fortunately, we have one of those available to us, which is a tangle which explodes everything. And you can see how the build falls down a little bit when you don't have something stopping the entire room. I'm going to get slapped by that guy here. There we go. More, so we can slide in. And then we get ourselves Transcendence, which is actually really helpful in this specific instance. Because when we have Transcendence, we can do this forever, pretty much, if we keep Transcendence up. But this is where the build will have its problems. When you come up against an enemy that doesn't teleport like Goku, you can see that when you don't have an enemy that can be killed by the melee, you have to just make sure that you have weapons that are able to kill it. You can see, I'm going to do this again. Keep shooting, keep shooting, keep shooting. And then I can finish them. Perfect, right? When we go into this next area, you can see how the build will once again ramp up and then it will slow down again. So playing solo can be a little bit rough. I'm going to start off with my super just to make sure I've got Devour active. Boom, get myself going there. Slide around once again. There we go. Throw my grenade out because I don't need it at the moment. Slide in again. Chain a whole bunch of stuff. We can finish her. Stop the entire room. Blow up the entire room. Do the same again here. You can see I've lost my melee, but I've got it back. And we've also got Transcendence. So it means I can throw this out. I can get this get started with the next thing I want to do. I got another tangle I can blow up. One of these. There we go. So we've got Transcendence going now, which will find the champion. See how the champion gets frozen there. And then we're going to swap back to our rockets, which aren't reloaded. I'm actually terrible at this video game. But we've frozen the boss. We're going to jolt him again. Well, we're going to make sure he's unstoppable. We can chain to these guys, which is going to be very helpful. We can also finish her, which is going to hopefully stop the boss, the champion. And you can see how strong the build is under power. So in general play, it will work very well as long as you also have these issues. You don't run into these issues. So we'll clear out this area of enemies. Again, slide in. Slide in again. Finish off this enemy. And there you go. That's how the build works. So you can see how if you don't have the things that help you, like your melee available, and there's very high health targets that don't die, the build will fall down. I think it will be complemented very well when it's in a team of 3, because then you can have teammates to help you. They can take out some of the higher health targets, and you can just clear a room. And then those targets that have been killed, you can make them suppressed. So yeah, it's very, very good. I really enjoyed using this build, but it does kind of fall down a little bit when you're playing solo. But I am also 22 levels under power. So yeah, let's go through my final thoughts on the build. This build has a lot of strengths, but also can fall off against single targets when they simply do not die. But this won't really be a problem when you are in a team of 3, because you could have an extra person that is set up to do damage to a boss or a champion that you have locked down. You can lock up the entire room when you finish things and make it easier for your teammates to focus on the more high priority targets. And it's just fun to teleport everywhere and feel like you are like a lightning rod everywhere that you go. The only other downside to playing this build is in general activities where you can't get the loop going because there isn't enough enemies to kill, because we're so powerful right now that anytime you want to get going, you are seeing things die before your eyes. But I do have a few examples in this video that you may have seen during gameplay where we are in Onslaught, where many waves of enemies are spawning, and you can absolutely destroy everything with this build because the radius is so large at times that it just stops everything and you just have to clean everything up. It's very strong, and I think I will test this out in GMs later on in the season to see how it performs and whether or not I need to make some tweaks here and there with what weapon setups I have. The ones that I've suggested, apart from one specific one, is what I would recommend, but it's ultimately what activity you are going into. But what do you think of the build? Do you think it's that good? Are you going to try it out for yourself? Are you glad it's something different? Have you tried the new exotic class items yet? Because I am cooking up something really fun with one I got the other day, and I can't wait to bring it to you all, along with all of the other builds on the channel. And with that, hopefully you've enjoyed this video. Leave a like on it and subscribe if you are new. And this has been It's Jimbo. I'll see you guys next time.